Hi guys, it's Izzy, and in today's video I'm going to be doing some female book recommendations because it's female February. Female is hard to say repeatedly, and to celebrate it being female February, I thought I'd recommend some quality female books. I'm gonna be doing a range of like lesser known ones, more popular ones, range of genres. These are just some of my favourite books that contain female romances, and I do have a more general like LGBTQ recommendation on my channel from a little while ago, but it's pretty extensive. A couple of these are repeats, but most of them aren't, so if you want to check that out, I'll leave it in the cards, whichever side that is, and I'll be making a new one in June for Pride Month. So yeah, if you wanted like general queer books, you can check that video out. But today we're focusing on the sapphic romances, so let's get started with that. First book I'm going to recommend is Tarnished Are the Stars by Rosie Thor. This is what I would pitch as the queer Lunar Chronicles. If you read the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, the Cinder, Scarlet, Cress and Winter, this has very similar vibes. It's like a sci-fi set on a kind of earthy planet, and it follows three main characters. One who's, is she a princess? I think she's a princess or something like that. One is like the son of the like president basically of this place, and one is a girl from like this rundown village who is trying to like save her people basically. And all characters are queer. The male character is asexual. I don't remember if he's aromantic. I think he's just asexual, but don't quote me on that. And both girls like girls. Again, don't know specifics, but it's very cute, it's very heartwarming, and yeah, basically follows these three characters who kind of come together to kind of serve their own agenda, but also like help each other out, because in the end it will like help all three of them out, and they get into hijinks and all sorts and are trying to save their planet and do what they're told and find out secrets and mysteries. And basically like people in the like outer villages have like tarnished hearts, hence the name, and they need like a cure for it. So it's a pretty cool book. Aside from the queerness, it's a great book, and it's just a really fun sci-fi novel that's not too heavy but has plenty of action to keep you interested, and it's just all around a really good book. And it was a debut, and I was like so impressed by the writing. It was like incredible. Like you would have thought she was like a seasoned author, and it is own voices, definitely for the asexuality, not 100% sure. The next book I have to recommend is Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. I feel like this is kind of a well-known female book, but I've only read it recently, and it's been on my TBR for so long and I just never got around to it, and I just wanted to put it in here to like make people read it who haven't read it so far, because it is so good. Like, I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. It was so fantastic. It follows our main character Emmy, and she and her best friend Charlotte, is her name Charlotte? Yes, Charlotte, and she is given her brother's apartment to stay in for the summer with Charlotte, and he tells them to do like something great. That's the only like rule, is they need to do something like epic with their summer. And they go to an estate sale because they both work in film, and Emmy is like a set dresser thing, she works a set designer thing, and so she goes to these estate sales to buy props. And they go to this really famous guy's house, and who's died, and they find a letter who is addressed to someone, and they kind of go on this hunt to find this person that the letter's addressed to, because they feel like they have to. And along the way they like meet new people, and they get a really cool job on this up and coming film, and she meets someone and starts to have feelings for her, and all in all it's just such a fun book. If you like anything to do with movies or Hollywood or whatever, or set design if you're that specific, this is such a fun book to read. I really loved the film side of it because I'm a bit of a movie lover, so that was a really fun part of it, as well as it just being like a fun contemporary romance with great female representation. And yeah, I think it's brilliantly written. It kept me engaged the whole time. I loved the characters, and if this has been sitting on your TBR for a while, this is your reminder to pick it up. The next book I have to recommend is Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova, and this is I think it's supposed to be a labyrinth retelling, like the movie with David Bowie in it. I think that's what it's based off of, and basically it follows this family of Latina witches, which are called brujas in their culture, brujas. And basically our main character, forget her name, she like makes a wish for her magic to go away and ends up being transported to this island, and she has to try and save this island from the control of this witch. And you know, she has to do little tasks as she goes, and this is like a best friends to lovers situation, which is my jam. I love best friends to lovers trope. I prefer it to hate to love trope, which I feel like is a bit of a, like, I feel like everyone loves enemies to lovers, but I'm like here for the friendship to love. But yeah, it's a really fun book with a really fun plot. I really loved the characters. The romance wasn't like super present, it didn't like completely centre around the romance, but it definitely was a part of the story. And it was also just a super fun book that really kept me engaged. I really loved the setting of this like mysterious island, and overall it was just a really solid read. We're now going to go on an Ashley Herring Blake spree because I love her and you should all read her books, so do that. The first book and my favourite is How to Make a Wish by Ashley Herring Blake, and this follows our main character Grace, and her mum is an alcoholic and unreliable and not necessarily abusive, but just never shows up for Grace, and she is moved into this lighthouse because her mum has had another boyfriend, which she continually has boyfriends and she has to keep moving from place to place, and her best friend has a girl move in with him because her mother has died, so she is staying with their family, and so Grace is hanging out with this girl Eva, and they kind of bond over their different relationships with her mother. Eva is obviously grieving the death of her mother, and Grace is trying to figure out how she's supposed to deal with this mother who is so unreliable and is never there for her when she needs her, and they kind of form this really beautiful bond, and then that turns into romance. And this was just such a captivating read. I literally couldn't put it down because I was just so enthralled by the writing and the characters and the setting. It was just like captivating. Like I literally was just like mesmerized by it. The writing was just absolutely beautiful. The characters were so well developed and had such like real personalities and flaws and you know all that kind of stuff, and it just blew my mind and I loved it very much. The next book is Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake, and this is a slightly heavier one, even though How to Make a Wish was a bit heavy, but this is definitely heavier. This follows our main character Mara and her twin brother Owen, and he has been accused of rape by one of Mara's best friends, and so this kind of follows Mara as she has to deal with kind of reevaluating her whole relationship with her brother and her whole view of her brother. It explores the theme of having to see someone in a completely different light and how difficult that is to deal with it. And even though she knows her best friend or one of her best friends wouldn't lie and she does believe her, it's also a struggle when she feels like she has to choose between her best friend and her twin brother who she loves very much. And it was just such a well done exploration of those themes, and she also has to kind of deal with her own sexual abuse because of this coming up. And yeah, there is a female-female romance, and I think it was really beautiful, and it was kind of a very rocky road, but I was really happy with where it ended up. And yeah, it was just an absolutely stunning book. Obviously trigger warning for sexual assault, and yeah, but it's just stunning, and I think it's one of the best books that discusses sexual assault and the kind of theme of that we see it often in news of he couldn't do that, he's such a nice boy. And yeah, I think it does a fantastic job at taking that and kind of disproving it basically, and being like, that's stupid, like we can think people are good people, but that doesn't mean they're not capable of doing terrible things. She has also written 2 middle grade books which I love just as much, and the first one is Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World, and this is a book about a girl named Ivy Aberdeen, and she likes to draw pictures and paint pictures, and she has like this whole notebook of pictures of girls holding hands. And then one day her house is destroyed by a tornado and she is uprooted, and you know, kind of like floating around, having to stay in hotels, and she's feeling really unwanted by her family, and like her family don't really need her there, and that she's not like an integral part of her family. And so she's kind of dealing with the uprooting of her life, the difficult relationship she has with her family, and the feelings that she's starting to have for girls. And she makes a new friend and she starts to have feelings for her, and it's just a really, really beautiful book that is middle grade, and it just does such a brilliant job at exploring a lot of different themes that I think young people would relate to, but even as an adult I really connected to this book, and I thought it was really, really beautiful. And Ivy's kind of like internal monologue and thoughts and feelings felt very real and authentic, and you could totally see where she was coming from with all her feelings. And yeah, it was just a really authentic and honest book, and it was lovely, and the female was just a bonus, and I think it did a really great job at looking at having those feelings at a young age and trying to kind of figure them out and decide how you're going to proceed with it, and I just thought it was genius. And the final book by Ashley Herring Blake that I have to recommend is The Mighty Heart of Sunny St James. This is the first book I read by her, and I was just instantly in love. And this is another middle grade that follows our main character Sonny, and she starts off the book by having a heart transplant, and she decides that now she's had a new heart and she's, you know, recovering, she's gonna be a whole new Sonny, and she's gonna forget her best friend who ditched her, and she's gonna move on with her life and just become a new and improved Sunny St James. And this book follows Sunny after her heart transplant. It focuses quite a lot on she's adopted, and her biological mum kind of comes back into the picture and dealing with that at age like 10, 11, I don't remember how old she is, but it's so well done. The themes of adoption and biological parents and stuff is done so well, and her feelings that she starts to develop for a girl, it's just all done so beautifully. Sunny was such a sunny character, she was just a ray of light, and this book just made my heart warm, and I just loved it. It was just stunning, and just pick up any Ashley Herring Blake book, you will not be disappointed, and they all have girls who love girls, so what's not to love? Pick them up, pick any of them up, they're all incredible. I then want to recommend Saw Kill Girls by Claire Legrand. I feel like I do talk about this book quite a lot because I love it very much. This is a kind of horror-ish themed book, horror, slight fantasy, I guess, like magical realism, it's a weird mix, and it follows three girls, Marion, Zoe and Val, and Marion is new to this place called Sawkill Rock, and she makes friends with Zoe, who is the daughter of the police chief, and they start to try and figure out what's happening to these girls that keep going missing on their island. It used to happen every like 7 years or something, but it's happening more and more, and they are trying to figure out what is going on. And then we have Val, who has a very specific relation to what's happening to these girls and to the girls that go missing, and she is trying to find a way to break free of what is happening to her and to other girls. And these three girls kind of come together despite their differences to fight evil and save girls, and it's just so good. And there's two girls who like girls and one girl who is asexual, and that was done really well, and like the conversations she had with her boyfriend and stuff were all it was really nice to see. And yeah, this book is just amazing anyway. It's so I read this book in, I want to say, October of 2018, and I still think about it like on a weekly basis. Like, it has never left my mind. It's like permanently seared onto my brain, and I think that's like the true mark of a brilliant book, is a book that you just can't forget and that you just think about and you're just like, wow, that was just epic. So yeah, I love this book very much. It's a great book aside from the female romance, and you should pick it up. It's so good. Like, just give it a chance. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's worth it. I'm then going to recommend Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. This is a book that follows twins Georgina and Mary, and they live on this island called By the Sea, and every summer they have all these like bird watchers, because they have this like special bird on their island, and they live in like a B&B hotel thing, so they have all these visitors, and they also have magic in their family. All the girls in this family have magic, not like really high magic, like her sister can just like float for some reason, and Georgina's magic hasn't presented, and she's starting to worry that her magic might never present, and she might be the one girl in her family who doesn't get magic. And this also follows a story of sexual assault, and it also has a female romance, and it's just a book you kind of have to read. It's weird, but in a really beautiful and just inventive and captivating way, and it's just a really stunning book. It's super short, but it packs a real punch, and you get so much emotion from this book. And I just love like the relationship she has with her sister and how much she loves her, and you know, the relationship she has with her whole family, and it's just a really beautiful book, and I just think everyone should read it. I'm then going to recommend These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. This is a book about witches. It takes place in the real world, and our main character is an elemental witch, and so is her family, and they're in this like coven, and her ex-girlfriend is also in this coven, which makes for some difficulties because they have to see each other a lot, and the breakup wasn't exactly amicable. And we follow our main character as she starts to suspect a blood witch has come into town, and that's very bad and dangerous, and so she kind of goes on this investigative job and tries to figure out what's going on and how to stop it, and she kind of thinks maybe it's a bit her fault, and she also starts to develop feelings for another girl, but also has to deal with an ex who kind of wants her back, but she's too hurt by what happened to take her back, and trying to navigate that kind of relationship when they still have to see each other often. It was just a really fun book. I think people had very high expectations and it didn't quite live up to them, so they didn't give it like raving reviews, but I think because I went in with quite low expectations, I just had such a fun time, and I was just really engaged, and I liked the characters, and I liked the story, and I liked the magic element, and I just think it was a really solid read and a really great female romance. It's like quite central, the femaleness of it, and yeah, it was just a really good book. And if you like kind of magical books that are set in the real world, then I highly recommend picking it up. And yeah, just kind of go in with no expectations and you'll have a good time. I also want to recommend a graphic novel, and that is Heavy Vinyl by Carly Usdin. This is a weird graphic novel, but like weird in the best way, and it's a graphic novel that follows this girl who starts to work in like a record store, and it's like a shop that's just like all girls, and the woman who runs it, and kind of they have this kind of like little community in this record store. And then when she's been there for a while, they let her know that the record store is kind of a cover for their like vigilante group, and they kind of fight crime. They don't have superpowers, they just kick ass and fight crime. It's super queer, super cool, super fun, super feminist, and it's just so much fun. And I think the e-version of it is available on Scribd. If you have Scribd, then you can pick it up there, but it's just a really fun time, and I just thought I'd include a graphic novel on here because, you know, mix it up. I'm then going to recommend Pulp by Robin Talley. I didn't absolutely love this book, but I really want to recommend it based on the fact that it is literally just about like queer women and like lesbian culture, and it follows this girl who is doing her final project on lesbian pulp fiction, I think that's what it's called. And so we're following this story of this girl who is wanting a girlfriend and having relationship troubles, and then she's like investigating this like world of lesbian pulp fiction. And then we follow another narrative of a woman from the 60s or 50s, 60s, I don't remember what time period it was, but her kind of journey and her like heartbreak with the girl she's in love with, and she is writing a book. And I think we also follow the book, or do we follow the girls? But there's like 3 storylines all centered around like queer women and lesbian relationships and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't like love this book, but I did really want to recommend it. If you're looking for a book that kind of really delves into like lesbian culture and like history, then I think this is a really cool book. And it definitely wasn't like a bad book or anything, I just didn't like fall in love with it, but I do think that if that's something you're looking for, it's definitely worth a read. And finally, I'm just going to do some honourable mentions, books that are pretty popular but I just want everyone to know that they have female-female relationships in it, just in case you didn't know. The first one is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagan. Great fantasy book. Gay. Also, We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Mejia. Fingers crossed that's close. And that's a dystopian, rebellion, gay book. And also Wilder Girls by Rory Powers, which is like a sci-fi horror book and also gay. Also just some like other random books. I didn't like this book, but I don't, some other people might, and that's As I Descended by Robin Talley. This is a Othello retelling or Macbeth retelling. It's a Shakespeare retelling, also gay. And also Alice Oseman's book Radio Silence and I Was Born for This both have main bisexual girls. There's not really any like love interest, but they are queer, so I thought I'd just mention those as well. I do own them, but... And also The Diviners, because I can't not mention it for one video, has a great lesbian, asexual, disabled, Chinese, science-loving character called Ling Chan, who's the love of my life, and I would die for her, so read it. I mean, read it anyway, but also read it for Ling Chan. So those are all the books that I'm going to recommend for today. I hope some of them sound interesting to you and you can pick up some of them for the rest of February, or just the rest of the year, or in June for Pride Month. Whenever, read them. They're great. They're all solid books with great romances, great plots, great characters. have a great time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. I hope you read some female books for February, and I will see you in my next video. Also, follow me on Twitter and be my friend on Goodreads, because I'm really active on Goodreads and I want everyone to be my friend on Goodreads. Be my friend on Goodreads. I love friends on Goodreads. So how many times do I want to say Goodreads? Too many. And I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. I would love for you to join me on my little booktube channel where I just gush about all the books that I love. So yes, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.